They told me I was too heavy to carry this position. Not in a discreet email, not behind closed doors, but right in the main lobby in front of dozens of colleagues. 21 years I had dedicated myself to every line of code, every late-night shift, every system crisis. But one sentence suffocated everything, turning me into a laughingstock. That day, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just looked straight into the eyes of the person who had humiliated me and memorized every detail. Because if they thought I would leave quietly, they had forgotten that I was the one who built what this company relies on. And one day, it will be the reason they'll be begging on their knees. The morning in Chicago was damp and cold, the smell of coffee from the ground floor wafting into the main lobby. I had just stepped out of the elevator, my latte still steaming, when the revolving door opened. A young woman walked in, tall and slender, her blonde hair pulled back in a bun, wearing a black dress and shiny high heels. Next to her was Gregory Marston, the CEO, the man who in my 20 years working here had never once greeted anyone other than reporters. Her eyes swept around the room and stopped on me. She curled her lips slightly, her voice sweet as sugar but sharp as a knife. "You're Laura Wright. It's no surprise that the company wanted to find someone more gentle to lead the company into the next phase." A few giggles echoed from the group of employees nearby. I stood still, the hot latte in my hand suddenly cold. "I'm Chloe Summers. I'll be training for a while before replacing you." Less than 20 minutes later, with my latte only half empty, a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. "Meeting request. Immediate. No subject, no sender, just the location, conference room B, 32nd floor." This room was never used for gentle updates. This was where people made life-changing decisions. When I walked in, Gregory was sitting at the head of the table, his hands clasped together, his eyes fixed on the marble as if it would speak for him. To his right was Dana, the HR director, her usual polite smile replaced by a carefully trained neutral expression. And in the seat that should have been the CTO's, Chloe Summers. Her dress was still form-fitting, but now her lap held a bright tablet, her fingers gliding across it as if she owned the place. Gregory spoke, his voice flat. "Laura, you've given us a lot, but the company is entering a new era. The image and energy of our leadership need to align with the brand. Chloe will lead this transition." Before I could react, Dana slid a folder across the table. It was my termination letter. In the lower corner was the signature of Ethan Cruz, the man I had stayed up all night with to fix server problems, who had shared cold instant noodles with me. I looked at him. He avoided my gaze. "They said if I didn't sign, the whole department would be cut. Laura," they said, "your image isn't right for the global campaign." "You mean—" I interrupted. "You mean my body doesn't fit the image you want to promote?" No one answered. Only the hum of the air conditioner and the cold seeping down from the ceiling penetrating my bones. That afternoon, I went down to the cafeteria. Before I could order, I heard laughter from the table by the window. I heard the chairs in the meeting room on the 32nd floor had to be replaced because Laura broke the springs. A male voice whispered, but loud enough for everyone around to hear. A female voice chimed in, trying to stifle a laugh, and they said those chairs had a 10-year warranty. Laughter erupted dry and harsh. I stood still, the tray of food in my hands, feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. The smell of hot food suddenly disappeared, leaving only the cold metallic smell of embarrassment. No one looked at me, but I knew they knew I had heard. I turned away, abandoned my lunch, and returned to my office. No one in the room looked up when I entered, as if my presence had been erased from the internal map. Sitting down at my desk, I opened my laptop. My eyes scanned through old folders, and memories of 2019 surfaced when the legal department sent me the agreement to transfer all ownership rights to Vanguard AI. I refused to sign. The terms were vague, allowing the company to sell or reuse the system without my consent, even outside the scope of its operations. I replied, "I will not sign if the terms are unclear." And they forgot. That night, Chicago seemed to hold its breath. Streetlights cast cold yellow streaks across the kitchen table through the curtains. In front of me was my personal laptop, not connected to any internal accounts, not controlled by Marston Dynamics IT policies. A free zone. I turned on the machine and logged into an IP address that only I knew by heart. 3 years ago, during a chaotic data migration when everyone was panicking because the system was on the verge of crashing, I had secretly created a parallel environment for testing Ghost Node. It was a complete copy of Vanguard AI, completely separate from the main infrastructure, but with full access to all data and activity logs. No one in management knew it existed. Not HR, not the CTO, not even Ethan. The screen lit up. Dashboards appeared, graphs pulsing steadily like the heartbeat I'd heard for 21 years. But with just a few clicks, the familiar veins suddenly show new scars, user ID C. Summers appears densely in the log. I open a version of the core code. Immediately, I see irresponsible cuts. The original files have been renamed in a trendy way that she thought was creative. Safety checks have been completely removed. I switched to a critical module, the provider load balancing algorithm, and saw that the data conflict checks were gone. Without its self-protection mechanisms, the system was now like a suspension bridge with its safety cables removed, waiting for the next gust of wind to snap it in two. I leaned back in my chair. So they had given Chloe a nuclear bomb and she was repainting it pink. I opened another terminal. My fingers typed each command slowly and precisely, Cascade Lock. The activation condition was simple. If the account Laura Bennett is disabled, the entire system will freeze at the core level. Data remains intact but cannot be accessed, operated, or recovered from backups. I didn't use an automated script. I wrote it by hand, line by line, character by character, hiding it under 6 layers of fake comments like a pin hidden between the lining of a jacket. No one would find it unless they knew exactly where it was. When the final command ran successfully, the words "Operation Complete" appeared, flashing gently like a nod. I closed my laptop. In the darkness, I had laid the first brick of a wall that would collapse on those who thought they could erase me from the game. 2 days after I completed Cascade Lock, my phone rang. The screen displayed an unknown number with a New York area code. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but a hunch made me pick up. Laura Bennett. The male voice was deep clear, each word carrying weight. "Yes, I'm Carter Hill, Vice President of Infrastructure at Orion Logistics. We've heard about the leadership transition at Marston." He paused long enough for the message to sink in. "And also about the recent instability in their system." I was silent. Carter continued. "We don't want to rebuild from scratch when someone else created the original. We want you full architectural control, a clean budget, no bureaucratic obstacles, and equity." For a moment, I envisioned the future a new system, leaner, stronger, where no one could cut out critical code just because of brand image. And the best part, built right under the shadow of the company that had humiliated me. I said I'll think about it, but there's something I need to do first. That afternoon, I sat down at my desk at home and opened my personal laptop. I accessed the Aftermath folder where I had stored all the evidence, unsigned legal emails, internal documents confirming my ownership of the intellectual property, and the logs from the Ghost Node, recording every line of code that Chloe Summers had copied. I compressed everything into a single file and sent it through the U.S. Copyright Office's Copyright Infringement Reporting Portal anonymously with no name or contact information. Along with it, I added a detailed explanation of the timeline context and how they had re-registered the copyright for my software under Chloe's name. The screen displayed the message, "Your submission has been received." I leaned back in my chair. No fireworks, no fanfare. Just a small click, but it had lit the fuse. Orion would have me. Marston would have their nightmare. On Friday morning, I brewed a cup of black tea and opened my laptop. A link had been sent from a former colleague with no message. Just a title: Marston Dynamics Live introducing Gen Z Freight Core. I clicked on it. The screen showed a live stream countdown with Marston's shiny new logo. Below, thousands of people were waiting comments scrolling continuously. "I hear the new system is awesome. Hope there's no more old stuff." At 11:00 sharp, the background music started. The stage lights flare up, and Chloe Summers steps out. Her white, 2-button blazer is a size too big, probably to create the leadership aura she thinks is sophisticated. Her voice rings out, clearly rehearsed. "Today, we're launching a new era designed by the young for a digital future." The slides behind her display smooth graphics, all based on the algorithm I wrote, but now stripped of the protective code. The audience below nods and applauds. It's time for the live demonstration. Chloe picks up the controller and presses the button to activate the load prediction feature. The screen freezes. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then it was flooded with red error 504. Unauthorized script detected. Core logic interrupted. Recovery unavailable. A murmur spread through the room. A few people in the front pulled out their phones and turned to film Chloe, who blinked rapidly and smiled awkwardly. She stammered, "It's just a minor glitch," but the microphone picked up the tremor in her voice. On Twitter, the hashtag #FreightFail exploded. Clips of the error were cut set to music and spread at breakneck speed. Comments poured in young CEO, or just a saboteur. They should have kept the old one. I sat on the balcony, the Chicago wind blowing through my hair, lifting my teacup. I didn't laugh, nor did I cheer, because I knew this was just the first stumble and the real fall was yet to come. On Friday morning, I brewed a cup of black tea and opened my laptop. A link had been sent from a former colleague with no message. Just a title: Marston Dynamics Live introducing Gen Z Freight Core. I clicked on it. The screen showed a live stream countdown with Marston's shiny new logo. Below, thousands of people were waiting, comments scrolling continuously. "I hear the new system is awesome. Hope there's no more old stuff." At 11:00 sharp, the background music started. The stage lights flare up and Chloe Summers steps out. Her white 2-button blazer is a size too big, probably to create the leadership aura she thinks is sophisticated. Her voice rings out clearly rehearsed. "Today we're launching a new era designed by the young for a digital future." The slides behind her display, smooth graphics, all based on the algorithm I wrote, but now stripped of the protective code. The audience below nods and applauds. It's time for the live demonstration. Chloe picks up the controller and presses the button to activate the load prediction feature. The screen freezes. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then it was flooded with red error 504. Unauthorized script detected. Core logic interrupted. Recovery unavailable. A murmur spread through the room. A few people in the front row pulled out their phones and turned them toward Chloe, who blinked rapidly and smiled awkwardly. She stammered, "I'm sure it's just a minor glitch," but the microphone picked up the tremor in her voice. On Twitter, the hashtag #FreightFail exploded. Clips of the error were cut set to music and spread at breakneck speed. Comments poured in young CEO, or just a saboteur. They should have kept the old guy. I sat on the balcony, the Chicago wind blowing through my hair, lifting my teacup. I didn't laugh, nor did I cheer, because I knew this was just the first stumble and the real fall was yet to come. 2 months later, I officially signed a long-term contract with Orion Logistics, the title of Chief Architect, 3% equity, and absolute autonomy over all system designs. At the same time, the news reported Gregory Marston was forced to resign by the board of directors. His temporary replacement was Ethan Cruz, the former colleague who had signed my dismissal order. And even more shocking news, Orion had begun merger negotiations with Marston Dynamics. One early autumn morning, I walked through the revolving door of the old headquarters. The sign in front no longer bore the Marston logo, replaced by shiny stainless steel letters Orion Global Systems. The main lobby had been renovated, but the glass wall I used to stand by and look out at the street when my mind was as tense as a string remained. To the right of the reception desk hung a black and white photo, me taken at an Orion Technology conference, pointing at a design board with a few strands of hair falling across my face. Below the photo was engraved Laura Bennett, the architect who rebuilt the future. The new receptionist smiled. "That's you in the photo, isn't it? I hear people still talk about what you did. It's legendary." I nodded slightly, not denying it. The elevator took me to the top floor, where Orion's executive offices were located. On the door at the end of the hallway, a shiny steel plaque read, "Laura Bennett, Chief Architect." I opened the door and stepped inside. Morning light poured through the large glass windows, revealing the Chicago skyline in the distance. Sitting down at my desk, I opened the latest design for the Orion system. I didn't come back to get revenge. I came back to prove that what they once looked down on both my mind and my body was the very foundation they depended on to survive. They said I was too heavy to carry this position. Now I am carrying their future and I don't feel heavy at all.